In the early 1950s, while most car makers were busy building practical family cars or polishing old designs, one company in Spain decided to build something totally different. Not just different, but futuristic, wild, and unexpected. It was a car so rare that only two were made. One of them disappeared. The other survived dictatorships, auto shows, and museums. This is the story of the Pegaso Z-102 Cupola, a Spanish supercar with a plexiglass bubble on top, and a backstory full of engineers, speed records, and a little dictatorship. The Pegaso Z-102 was made by ENASA, a Spanish company better known for building trucks. Their chief engineer, Wilfredo Ricard, had worked at Alfa Romeo before this. He came back to Spain with a plan to make a high-performance sports car that could compete with the best cars in the world. The Z-102 had a double overhead camshaft V8 engine and a 5-speed manual transmission. The engine started as a 2.5-liter version with about 165 horsepower, but some had superchargers added and could push up to 250 horsepower. The car could reach a top speed of around 151 miles per hour and go from 0 to 60 in about 8.5 seconds. In 1953, one Pegaso Z-102 set a production car speed record in Belgium by reaching 151.04 miles per hour. That beat the Jaguar XK120 and made the Z-102 the fastest production car in the world at the time. Most Pegaso Z-102s were built with help from famous coach builders like Touring, Sauchik, and Serra. But the Cupola was different. It was designed in-house at ENASA after Spanish high school students submitted ideas for a car of the future. The team at ENASA turned those drawings into a real car. They made two Cupolas, and they looked like nothing else on the road. The rear window was a huge plexiglass dome. The body had enclosed wheels, side exhaust pipes, and a yellow and pink color scheme that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Or maybe a candy store. One of the two Cupolas was shown at the 1953 New York Auto Show. It caught the attention of Rafael Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic. He bought the car right away. Some stories say it even raced in the 1954 Carrera Panamericana, though that is not confirmed. After Trujillo's death, the car was seized and passed through a few hands. It ended up in Germany in the Rosso Bianco collection, owned by Peter Kaus. Then, in 2006, the Lumen Museum in The Hague bought and restored it. The car weighs about 2,866 pounds and sits low with a wheelbase of about 92 inches. It has a Dédion rear axle and torsion bar front suspension. The brakes were drums, and the steering was rack and pinion. The design was not just about looks. It was meant for high speed and handling. In 2015, the restored Cupola won the BMW Group trophy at the Villa d'Est concours. In 2016, it was named Best of Show at the Amelia Island concours d'Elegance. Today, it lives at the Lohmann Museum, standing as one of the oddest but most interesting examples of Spain's attempt at making a world-class supercar. It is a story of engineering, ambition, and a plexiglass roof that still turns heads. In the early 1970s, the world was facing a serious oil crisis. Gas prices were rising, and long lines formed at fuel stations across many countries. In Brazil, one man saw this as a chance to change the way people moved around cities. His name was João Augusto Conrado do Amaral Gurgel. He was not a big car company owner or a global executive. He was a Brazilian engineer with a vision to build Brazil's first electric car, made entirely in Brazil, for Brazilians. What followed was a small boxy car called the Gurgel Itaipu E150. It looked simple, but it carried a big idea, an idea that started before most people even knew electric cars were possible. The Gurgel Itaipu E150 was first shown to the public in 1974 at the São Paulo Auto Show, officially called the Salão do Automóvel. Gurgel named the car after the Itaipu hydroelectric plant, one of Brazil's largest energy projects at the time. He wanted the name to show that this car ran on clean energy. Gurgel's company, Gurgel Motores, was based in Rio Claro, in the state of São Paulo. That is where the car was designed and built. The Itaipu E150 was a two-seater city car. It had a very small footprint, measuring around 104 inches long, 55 inches wide, and 57 inches tall. Its shape was like a trapezoid, with flat sides and short front and back. It looked more like a toy than a car, but it was not built to win beauty contests. It was built to be practical, cheap, and electric. The car used 10 12-volt lead-acid batteries placed under the floor and behind the seats. These batteries added about 705 pounds to the car's total weight, which was around 1,720 pounds. That means the batteries were heavier than a sumo wrestler after lunch. The motor was small, just 3.0 kilowatts or about 4.2 horsepower. That gave the car a top speed of about 37 miles per hour. Early versions could only go 18 miles per hour. That is slower than some golf carts, but it was meant for cities, not highways. The range was between 37 and 50 miles on a full charge, and it took about 10 hours to recharge fully using a regular home outlet. That means you could plug it in before dinner and drive it after breakfast. The car was never sold to the public. Only about 20 to 27 units were made as prototypes. Gurgel had hoped to sell it for the same price as a Volkswagen Fusca 1300, but the batteries were too expensive and the technology was not ready for mass production. Later, Gurgel tried again with a larger model, the Itaipu E400, and later the E500. These had more room and were used as small trucks and vans. Around 200 of those were made, but they also faced the same problems: high cost and low speed. Gurgel's dream of a fully Brazilian electric car faded over time. His company filed for bankruptcy in 1994, but the Itaipu E150 still stands as a rare early step toward electric cars in Brazil, long before names like Tesla or Nissan Leaf were known. In the cold forests of Ukraine, in a little town called Lutsk, a strange, boxy little car rolled off an assembly line. It looked like something between a Jeep, a toy, and a metal bread box. Most people who saw it either raised an eyebrow or scratched their head. But behind that odd shape was one of the Soviet Union's most unusual vehicles, the Luaz 969. Its story is tangled with military needs, civilian dreams, and a whole lot of mud. The Luaz Z-969 did not start with the Luaz factory at all. It began in the late 1950s when engineers at the Soviet Automobile Institute, known as NAMI, were working on tiny four-wheel drive vehicles. They created the NAMI 049 and the NAMI 049A. These were early experiments meant for soldiers to carry supplies, stretchers, or even sneak through swamps. These vehicles had to be light, rugged, and easy to fix with a wrench and some hope. The results were odd, but useful. By 1961, the Lutsk automobile plant, also known as Luaz, produced the Luaz Z-967. This was a small amphibious military vehicle that floated like a bathtub and drove like a stubborn goat. It had a MiMZ air-cooled engine with just 887 cubic centimeters of size and around 30 horsepower. The Luaz Z-967 was not fast, but it could crawl over bad roads, through rivers, and carry the injured on a flat deck. Soldiers might not have loved it, but it did its job. Later, the idea came to make a version for regular folks. The Zaz factory tried it first with a pre-production model called Zaz 969. That model later moved to Luaz, and in 1971, the Luaz 969 was born. This civilian version still used the small MEMZ engine and had a rear-wheel drive setup you could switch to four-wheel drive when things got muddy. It had drum brakes, a 4-speed manual gearbox, and weighed around 2,090 pounds. With a ground clearance of about 11 inches, it had legs like a goat. In 1975, the Luaz Z969A came along with a bigger MAMZ 969A engine, 1,197 cubic centimeters, and about 40 horsepower. That meant it could go faster, barely. Then came a short-lived box van version called the Luaz 969F that could carry about 880 pounds of cargo. These versions improved slightly on things like the gearbox and added a differential lock for better grip on rough ground. The most known model came in 1979, the Luaz 969M, nicknamed Volin or Volinianka. This one had full-time four-wheel drive, improved safety, and better doors that actually locked. It had a soft top or a hard top, and even the windshield wipers moved to a smarter spot. The engine remained the same MAMZ 969A, but the braking system became dual circuit with servo assist. The top speed rose to around 62 miles per hour. That is, if you were feeling brave. In its lifetime, the Luaz factory built over 170,000 units of the 969M alone. It got some attention in Europe too, earning a gold medal in Czechoslovakia and turning heads at the Turin Motor Show. It may not have been beautiful, but it was honest. The interior was as plain as a lunchbox, the seats borrowed from other cars, and you could take off the doors if you wanted more breeze. Even with its awkward looks and low power, the Luaz 969 had a simple goal: get you through the worst roads without falling apart. It did that job for farmers, soldiers, and anyone else who needed a rugged ride in a place where roads were more like ideas than pavement. In the early 1970s, while gas-guzzling cars ruled the roads and the world faced its first oil crisis, something unusual was being built on a quiet island off the coast of England. It was not big. It was not fast. And it did not even have a normal engine. Most people ignored it. But what came out of this strange little factory on the Isle of Wight would become one of the earliest fully electric city cars. It was called the Enfield 8000, and its story includes a Greek shipping magnate, British engineers, and even a future land speed record holder. This is not a tale about speed or glory, but about how an odd, boxy car tried to change the way we think about driving. The Enfield 8000 was built by Enfield Automotive Limited, a small company in the United Kingdom. It started in a factory at Somerton Works, located in Northwood, on the Isle of Wight. The man behind this idea was Giannis Goulandris, also known as John Goulandris, a wealthy shipping owner from Greece. He believed the world needed smaller and cleaner cars, so he hired a team to build one. The main design work was done by Konstantin Adraktas, a Greek-British engineer, and John Ackroyd, a man who would later work on the Thrust 2, a jet-powered car. Together, they created a tiny electric car, no longer than a washing machine, and about as fast. They called it the Enfield 8000. It looked like a toy, but it was a real two-seater car. The Enfield 8000 had a 48-volt direct current motor that gave it about 8 horsepower. It had no gearbox and could go up to 48 miles per hour. That was not much, but it was enough for city driving. The batteries were 812-volt lead-acid types, 4 in the front and 4 in the back. It also had a small extra battery just to power the lights and wipers. Its range was about 40 miles, but most drivers got closer to 25. It could go from 0 to 10 miles per hour in 1.6 seconds, and from 0 to 30 in about 15.7 seconds. You could probably make toast in less time. It had a steel tube frame and aluminum panels. The whole thing weighed about 2,150 pounds. It used parts from other cars, doors from the Mini, suspension from the Hillman Imp, and a rear axle like the Reliant three-wheelers. The car was tested by the British Electricity Council, and they bought around 65 of them. Only about 120 cars were ever made. Production later moved to the island of Syros in Greece, under a new company called Enfield Naorion, but Greek laws made it hard to sell the cars there. Even Ronald Reagan got involved. When he was governor of California, he had 3 Enfield 8000s shipped to the United States to test cleaner cars, but nothing much came of it. Today, very few survive, and most are in the United Kingdom. One Enfield 8000 got a second life in the hands of Johnny Smith, a television presenter. He turned his Enfield into a drag racing car called the Flux Capacitor. It had twin electric motors and 800 horsepower. It could do the quarter mile in under 10 seconds and reached 121 miles per hour. That was faster than many sports cars. So from a tiny workshop on a British island, with help from a Greek businessman and a few clever engineers, came a car that did not burn fuel, did not make noise, and barely fit 2 people. It may not have changed the world, but it sure tried. And today, when people plug in their modern electric cars, they might not know they are part of a story that started with the odd little Enfield 8000.